So I got a question from someone wanting me to talk about vitiligo, and this is basically a depigmentation of the skin, where you might see white spots on the skin, or part of the skin will have pigment and other parts will not. So if you or someone you know is dealing with vitiligo type issues, then in this video I'm going to give you some insights to some interesting correlations that are often seen with this issue and other health issues kind of going on together. And I'm also going to help you understand why we might see these things together and steps you might be able to take to improve your situation. Let's jump in.
TC Hale is not a doctor and does not claim to be a doctor or licensed in any type of medical field. Don't be an idiot and use anything heard on the show as medical advice. This information should be used for educational purposes only, and you should contact your doctor for any medical advice. Now get off me.
So in the body there are these cells called melanocytes, and they produce this melanin, which is what pigments the skin. So these cells are responsible for the pigmentation of the skin. So if you're dealing with this vitiligo type issue, then these melanocytes are not functioning correctly for one reason or another. And I'm not a doctor, I'm not giving you any advice, I don't know your situation, but I'm going to put some links in the description below this video to some studies and some papers that kind of go through some of the things we're going to talk about, so you can dig deeper into those and find the right questions that you want to ask your doctor. But a lot of people feel like this vitiligo issue is really associated with autoimmune issues, and they kind of feel like, oh well, for some reason the body's just kind of attacking these melanocytes, and then they don't work correctly, and then we don't see the pigment in all the places where the pigment should be. So it's very common for people to feel like this has to deal with an autoimmune issue, and I feel like that's completely possible. But to see what else can be going on, we want to look at other things that are associated with this issue. And the most common things that we see are autoimmune type issues, adrenal fatigue, where the adrenals are just kind of burnt out and don't have the ability to do the job that they're supposed to do. We see altered microbiome, or that gut flora is just kind of wrong. Maybe there's too many bad guys in there and not enough good guys, and we know now that that can create a lot of trouble. When that gut flora, or the good bacteria that's supposed to exist in our large intestine, is not there, or it's altered, it can really create a lot of issues with our health, and as well as just symptoms. We also see a lot of IBD, or inflammatory bowel disease, and issues like Crohn's or colitis and those type of things, where we see that inflammatory situation going on with the bowel. Also some gastritis issues, which is inflammation inside the stomach. We see a lot of hypothyroid, connective tissue diseases, things like psoriasis, and even psychiatric disorders. So we kind of want to go through and say, well, why would those things happen with this vitiligo? And I'm just going to give you some insights that might accidentally make a little bit of sense. And then what are you going to do when things make sense? That's not something that happens every day. So the first thing we want to jump into a little bit is just the adrenals. And the adrenals make these hormones that help the body function correctly. And one thing that you can do at home that's very simple, and this is not diagnostic, this is not going to diagnose you with adrenal fatigue, but it could give you some insights and say, oh, maybe I need to get this checked out a little bit, is you can just get a blood pressure cuff, those automatic time where you just push the button, it just kind of goes. And you can get them for $30 or $40 at any pharmacy. And you want to lie down and relax, and then take your blood pressure while you're lying down. And have a little notepad there so you can write down what the numbers are that you see. And before you stand up or do anything else, or do a cheer or whatever, you want to take your blood pressure again as you're standing up. So kind of stand up and push the button, and then just try to hold still so the blood pressure machine doesn't error out or anything. And then see what that blood pressure is when you're standing. Now, be careful with this. If you get dizzy when you stand up fast, make sure somebody's helping you do this. Don't get dizzy and fall over and hit your head like I need that to hear about. So we want to look at the numbers from when you're resting to when you're standing, and what those changes should be. We want to see that top number, which is the systolic number. We want to see that go up when we stand up. If that top number is going down and it's a lower number than the number was when you were resting, then that can be an indication that the adrenals are a little bit tired and don't have the ability to really help that blood flow like it should when we stand up. You know, gravity happens when we stand up, and the body is supposed to help us get that blood flowing to all the places when we're standing up. And when that doesn't happen appropriately, a lot of times that can be an indication that the adrenals are just kind of wiped out and a little bit tired. So if that's the case and you're dealing with vitiligo, well, all of a sudden you're in a big group that's really common. It's very common to see adrenal fatigue with this issue. Now, one thing that I don't love is I don't love treating adrenals. Now, if this test shows up to where your standing number is a lot lower, then you know, okay, maybe I need to get this checked out a little bit. But I don't love treating adrenals even naturally, because it's just kind of like whipping a tired horse, and from my point of view. The adrenals are tired because there's something going wrong in the body. So a lot of times when the body doesn't have enough resources, if there's a lack of resources in the body that the body needs to kind of run all the operations that it wants to run, then it'll ask the adrenals, hey, can you help me out? Can you make some more of these hormones that can help this body function the way that it's supposed to function, even without enough resources? And the adrenals are like, oh yeah, that's my job. I'll do that. I can help out. But over time, doing that every day, all day long, the adrenals get kind of wiped out and they can't continue to do that. And now the body doesn't have the resources it needs to run all its functions, but it also doesn't have the ability for the adrenals to help out. So when you're going to try to treat the adrenals and give these natural supplements or vitamins or whatever it is to boost adrenal function, you're just trying to whip a tired horse. The horse is tired. What we want to do is trying to figure out where the fire is. Where's the 4-star alarm that's causing the adrenals to do all this extra work? And one thing to think about is there could be an invader in the body, some type of infection going on. The person might not even know that they had this infection. Maybe it's some type of infection in the gut with the dysbiosis issue going on that we kind of talked about, where we see that altered microbiome going on with this vitiligo a lot. So that could be going on. Maybe somebody has like some kind of Lyme's infection or something that might go undetected for years or even decades. So the body has a lot of its resources going towards dealing with this invader, and there aren't enough resources left over just to run the bodily functions that the body wants to run. So it's like, hey, adrenals, help me out. And the adrenals then get really tired. So I kind of feel like that could be a combination thing that we see going on. And if we look at this, IBD and gastritis type issues, along with these autoimmune issues, a lot of times these autoimmune issues are not really a situation of, man, the body got confused. It just attacked itself. Shucks. I wish that body didn't get confused like that. A lot of times there's a major inflammatory immune response on purpose, because there's a problem going on in the body, and sometimes it has to do with digestive malfunctions and even issues like leaky gut. So when we're looking at this with this inflammatory bowel situation like Crohn's or colitis, and I'm not going to go all the way into this, but I'll put a link in the description below for our video on Crohn's and colitis so that you can dig into that a little bit more if that's something that you're dealing with. But when we eat food, this stomach should make hydrochloric acid or HCl. And that HCl is meant to help us acidify the food so that we can break it down and get the nutrients out of that food. And then once this food is acidified, it comes down here into the duodenum, and acidic products going into the duodenum will trigger this gallbladder to squirt alkaline bile down to come down and help neutralize those acids. And we have these opposite pHs that collide of this acidic product in the stomach meeting this alkaline bile, and those opposite pHs colliding can create a sizzle that really helps us bust the food apart, get all the nutrients out of that food, and then give the body resources that it needs. That's why we eat food, is to get those vitamins and minerals and amino acids and all those dietary fats that help the body function correctly. So if a person has digestive malfunctions and one or more of these systems is not working correctly, they're not really getting all the nutrients out of their food. And that's going to create a deficit of resources that the body needs. And we go back to the place where it's like, hey, adrenals, can you help me out? So that's a possibility, because it's very common for someone not to be making enough stomach acid today for a wide variety of reasons. And it's very common for someone's bile to become too thick and sticky to flow correctly. And when that's not coming down to help neutralize those acids, well, these acids will continue to move through the intestinal tract without being neutralized. And those acids are meant to help us break down protein. Well, guess what the intestinal tract is made of? Yeah, it's protein. So as these acids start to digest our intestinal tract, the body's like, oh, we don't want that, so let's bring all the water here to cool it off, and we're going to rush it out the back door, and then we get crazy diarrhea that can come with those issues like Crohn's and colitis, along with the inflammation that can come from acids moving through there day after day, year after year, without being neutralized by the alkaline bile that's supposed to come down and neutralize those acids. Now, the pancreas makes bicarb that comes out and helps neutralize those acids a little bit as well, but it might not be enough as this alkaline bile would really do the job. So the alkaline bile really seems to be the big player there. And a lot of people feel like some of these actions in the pancreas are actually triggered by some of these other things going on. So if they're not working correctly, they might not be triggered. Now, when we're looking at the gastritis type issue as well, when there's not enough stomach acid there, not only can we not break down our food, but we also have the door open. So any invaders that come in on the food that we're eating are going to set up camp in the stomach and create this problem. So when they come in on the food, they're supposed to die in an acid bath. That's part of the function of that stomach acid. So if someone's not making enough HCl, they don't fry those guys, and then they have a cake party and raise their kids and create all this inflammation in the stomach. And they can also move down here and create this small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, or the SIBO issue like all the cool kids have these days. And they can also move into this lower large intestine and create the dysbiosis. Because when there's too many bad guys, they can kind of take over. And the good guys are like, oh, there's too many bad guys. This town has gone to a muck. And that's what can create this dysbiosis issue, is just being overwhelmed by all the bad guys and not enough good gut flora in there to keep things in check. So to take this to another level, when we look at issues like leaky gut, this is just an issue where this is the intestinal lining here, and these are the junctions in those cells that are supposed to be tight so that all these bad guys and things don't get in. Food particles don't get through into the bloodstream right here. This should just be broken down food particles like vitamins and minerals and amino acids. That should be going into the bloodstream. So when these foods don't get broken down correctly because someone isn't making enough stomach acid, or their bile is not flowing correctly and they're not really busting that food apart, then these bigger particles can come into the bloodstream, and then the bloodstream's like, oh, well, I don't know what a peanut butter sandwich is. This isn't broken down into elemental nutrients. It's still like a peanut butter sandwich. So I don't know what that is, so that must be an invader, and now I'm going to go to war against a peanut butter sandwich. So every time the person eats a peanut butter sandwich, they have this crazy reaction that's really just the body dealing with what it's viewing as an invader. And when we also look back at these issues where, oh man, these bad guys are going to come in here and set up camp because they weren't fried with enough stomach acid, well, a lot of people feel like it's those bad guys, and especially like yeast, mold, fungal kind of things, that have the ability to make these junctions wider or to bore holes in them, or something that's allowing this leaky gut issue to come about in the first place. And I don't want to dig all the way into that in this video, but we'll put a link in the description below for our video on understanding leaky gut, so you can dig into that if you feel like that's going to be important for you to fix your vitiligo issue. Because if there is a leaky gut issue here, and the food is not being digested correctly, then these bigger food particles are coming in, and it's going to create this autoimmune type reaction. And you can see that the body is not just attacking itself, it's attacking what it's viewing as an invader, but it's the foods you're eating every day. So it's like there's a war going on every day. So this can be a big problem. So when we go back to these things that we see connecting with each other, then we can understand how a lot of these autoimmune issues may be coming about. Now, there's other types of autoimmune issues, but I feel like a lot of them can come from those digestive malfunctions and the leaky gut type issues. Also, when we're not having enough resources because we're not breaking down the food correctly, then that can lead right back to these adrenal issues. We can also see these leaky gut type issues and the autoimmune type issues when we're looking at things like psoriasis and other skin issues that are often seen with this vitiligo problem. We can see autoimmune thyroid issues, because there's a variety of thyroid issues that seem to show up with this. Hypothyroid just seemed to be the most common type of thyroid issue to deal with that. And when we're looking at hypothyroid problems, an interesting thing here is we look at the liver producing this bile and then sending it down here to the gallbladder to be stored and concentrated for when it gets called on when this acidic product comes down here to help neutralize. But that bile also helps us emulsify our dietary fats so that we can use those dietary fats and we can access fat-soluble vitamins like A, E, D, and K. So if someone's bile is not flowing correctly, it can make it hard to access all those fat-soluble vitamins that are really important. We also need to understand that the liver filters all these toxins out of the body, and then we know its job is to get those toxins out of the body, but what a lot of people don't know is it puts a lot of those toxins in the bile. So that when the bile's called on to come down here in the intestinal tract, it's moving through there and carrying those toxins with it so that those toxins can go out the back door when we poop like a champion. So if this bile is not flowing correctly, then all this junk that the liver filtered out is not detoxing out of the body the way that it should. It stays here in the gallbladder, it can get reassimilated into the system, and then the liver's got to filter it out all over again. It's like, hey, I did this already, why are you giving me this again? So the liver can get overwhelmed and then not be able to do all of its jobs correctly. So that can be important when we're looking at these thyroid issues, because for the thyroid to function correctly, the body needs to convert that T4 thyroid hormone to the active T3, and that's what helps the thyroid really work. So a lot of times these hypothyroid issues are really a liver problem, where the liver doesn't have the ability to do all of its jobs. It can't do this conversion because it's so overwhelmed dealing with trying to filter out the same stuff over and over again, because the bile is not flowing and the body is not detoxing the way that it should. So we see a lot of people who will improve bile flow, help the liver function like it's supposed to function, and then it can do this conversion and allow this thyroid to work correctly. But it's just interesting that we're seeing this thyroid issue with the vitiligo so much. And we can also understand, well, if the bile is not flowing, we also can't access those fat-soluble vitamins. We're not really busting the food apart into those elemental nutrients that the body needs to get the resources that it needs, so it's not calling on the adrenals all the time. We see a lot of loose stool issues when that bile is not flowing correctly, and that seems to match up with some of these other things that we're seeing over here. And psychiatric disorders, there's a lot of things that can create psychiatric disorders, but for some people it's about the fact that there's not enough nutrients for the brain to work correctly, or there aren't enough minerals in the system for signals to travel correctly from the body to the brain and from the brain back to the body. And we're also looking at these connective tissue diseases. You know, a lot of these are viewed like, oh man, the body's just decided to attack its own connective tissues. Well, what if that's not the case? What if it's a case of the body not having enough resources to function correctly because the person's not breaking their food down correctly and bringing those resources in? Well, what do you think the body's going to do? It's going to say, well, I'm going to get these resources anyways. And it will do that by breaking down our tissues and turning that into the resources that it needs. The body can break proteins down and turn that into glucose. It can break it down to turn into amino acids that the body needs to run a lot of its functions. So a lot of those things can happen with connective tissues. There's also other issues that can keep a person from rebuilding tissues correctly, and that's another issue we won't get into here. But it's just interesting that we're seeing this with a lot of these issues that can come along with a lack of resources and an inability to bring those resources in. So who's to say also that this whole problem with the melanocytes isn't just the body breaking down those cells as well to use for nutrients? Because think about this. If you're dealing with this vitiligo issue, it's probably the priority in your life. It could be really affecting your social situation. It could be affecting your job or your income or your confidence. It's probably a really big deal to you. It's probably even a priority. But you can also see where it wouldn't be a priority to the body, because when you think about this problem, it's not really affecting your ability to survive and thrive. And that's always the body's priority, is survival. So if it doesn't have resources to run all these other functions that need to run, like organs that need to be rebuilt so that they can function correctly, it might beg, borrow, and steal from other places that it might not view as a priority, even though it's creating this symptom that to you is a priority. So we need to understand that we can't always dictate what the body's going to do. Now, when we look at nutrients that are often seen as going low with vitiligo, we see copper and zinc, and it's also interesting to think about iodine and selenium as well. And what's interesting about this to me is that we need to really break our food down correctly to access the minerals in that food. And if we can't do that, then we can't pull the minerals out of the food, and then those minerals are going to go low in the system. But what's interesting about zinc is that we need zinc to make hydrochloric acid or stomach acid. That's one of the minerals the body needs to be able to make hydrochloric acid. So if a person doesn't have enough zinc, then they can't really break down their food correctly. And if they can't break down their food correctly, they can't get enough zinc coming in to fix the problem. So a person can get kind of stuck in this cycle of broken digestion for years or decades. And we also know that iodine and selenium are really important for the thyroid to function correctly. So again, that leads us back to, is this why we see thyroid issues so often with this? I don't know, but it's interesting that we see them both. Now, a very common step that we see people take is we see people use very high doses of vitamin D, like 35,000 IU a day kind of high doses. And there's some studies out that show that people see good results when they do this. I just happen to not be a huge fan of that because I view that as the issue is likely coming from an autoimmune issue where there's an autoimmune inflammatory response going on for some reason. And vitamin D is very important for the immune system to function correctly. If we don't have enough vitamin D, the immune system can't function the way that it's supposed to. But in the same regard, too much vitamin D can actually turn off our immune system. And I'll put a link in the description below for our video on who should stop taking vitamin D if you want to dig into that, and where I talk about some of the studies that will help you understand that. But if somebody's using so much vitamin D that they're turning off the immune system, then it would make sense that any autoimmune type symptom would improve. I'm just not a fan of turning off a system that can keep us safe from a lot of other invaders that are kind of out there in the world right now. So again, I'm not saying vitamin D is bad. I feel like we really need vitamin D to help the body function correctly. But when you go to these super high doses that a lot of people are suggesting, it can create just as much trouble as not having enough vitamin D. And if we're turning off that immune response, it might be viewed as, oh wow, it fixed that symptom. But what other issues is that going to create? So when we look at the steps to take that are going to be right for you, you can see, I don't know what to tell you to do. You can see there's a lot of things that could be creating this issue. And it's really going to vary greatly from person to person. But if you want to think about, well, where should I start? And you should plan on digging into this. You should not plan on watching a 60-second video and finding some remedy that's going to fix vitiligo. I just don't think that that's going to happen for very many people unless they just happen to strike gold and find something that's going to help the underlying cause for them. We really need to look at what's going wrong in the body. And I would start with issues like doing this adrenal test to see, does it appear that my adrenals are fatigued? If they are, I need to look into what's going wrong in the body. Are there resources that are too low, or is there some kind of fire going on that's creating an emergency for the body? I would also look into any digestive malfunctions or leaky gut issues. If you're having any digestive symptoms at all, like burping or bloating or acid reflux or constipation or diarrhea or nausea, or maybe food just kind of sits there like a rock in your stomach for hours, or even skin or acne type issues, all of those are signs that one or both of those digestive sides are not working correctly. And what's great is that you can take steps to improve those issues. You can help those functions work the right way and turn some of these things around. So we'll put a link in the description below for our video on 10 signs of low stomach acid and our video for 10 signs of poor bile flow, so you can look at those and see, oh, do I have signs of these things going wrong? And if I do, I might need to learn to take some steps to improve those issues. And my book, Kick Your Fat in the Nuts, chapters 3 and 4, kind of walk you through figuring out which aspects of digestion may not be working correctly and steps you can take to correct those. And the book is available on Amazon, but I'll put a link in the description below so you can get the whole thing totally for free, and then you can just jump to chapters 3 and 4 to understand Do I need digestive help? Are there things that I need to work on to improve my ability to give my body the nutrients that it needs to function correctly? And if you're having some thyroid issues, then you want to see what kind of steps you can take to improve that scenario. If your bile is not flowing and the liver is having to do that work all over again, that's a really big step. That's going to be probably the biggest priority for you, is to get that bile flowing, and we already talked about you wanting to improve digestive issues anyways. So if you want to right now, you can jump over and check out our video on 5 steps to improve bile flow to get some insights on things that you can get going to help that move in the right direction as well. So I hope this helps you understand where you should start to dig into figuring out what may be creating this trouble for you. I can't wait to hear about your results.